At my husband's hospital charity gala, my name tag read Nathan's little housewife. His colleagues, especially his smirking female boss, the chief medical officer, burst into laughter. "Still playing scientist at home?" she asked loud enough for everyone to hear. As I removed the tag and walked toward the exit, I leaned close to her ear and whispered, "I'd double-check your clinical trial data if I were you." The color drained from her face. "But let me start from the beginning. And what exactly do you do, Vanessa?" the hospital board member asked at my husband Nathan's promotion dinner 6 months earlier. Before I could answer, Nathan jumped in with that dismissive laugh I'd grown to hate. "Oh, Vanessa used to work in public health research. Now she mostly reviews medical papers from home. Keeps her busy while I handle the real healthcare decisions at Street Brennan's." The words landed like a slap across my face. 3 months earlier, my paper reviewing had identified a contaminated blood supply chain that would have affected 12,000 patients across the Midwest. The CDC had personally thanked me for preventing what could have been a hepatitis outbreak. But according to my husband, I was just keeping myself busy. I smiled politely at the table full of hospital executives and pharmaceutical representatives while something fundamental shifted inside me. The woman sitting across from me, Dr. Serena Blake, Street Brennan's newly appointed chief medical officer, nodded with exaggerated sympathy. "How sweet that you found something to fill your time," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Nathan is so fortunate to have someone so supportive at home." I wanted to tell her that my something had been published in the New England Journal of Medicine twice and that I held patents on 3 epidemiological tracking algorithms used by hospitals nationwide. Instead, I reached for my wine glass and wondered when exactly my husband had started seeing me as a hobby. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. 7 years earlier, we'd met in the break room of University Medical Center during our residencies. 2 exhausted residents surviving on coffee and determination. I was finishing my fellowship in epidemiology when Nathan knocked over my carefully organized research notes while reaching for the last blueberry muffin. "I am so sorry," he said, scrambling to pick up papers covered in statistical models. "Is this disease transmission modeling, outbreak prediction algorithms? I'm trying to identify patterns that could help hospitals prepare for seasonal epidemics before they happen." His eyes lit up with genuine interest. "That's brilliant. I'm Nathan. I'm going into hospital administration because I want to change how healthcare systems actually work." That conversation lasted until our pagers dragged us back to reality. We discovered we both believed healthcare was broken from the inside. Both dreamed of making systemic changes, and both survived on an unhealthy amount of caffeine. "Let's make a pact," I said as we walked back to our respective departments. "Whatever happens, we support each other's work completely. No competition, no jealousy. We're both trying to fix the same broken system, just from different angles." "Partners in healthcare revolution," he agreed, shaking my hand with mock solemnity. We lived that promise completely during those early years. When Nathan interviewed for his first administrative position at a small community hospital, I spent weeks helping him prepare presentations on operational efficiency. I even built financial models showing how his proposed changes would save the hospital money while improving patient outcomes. "You're going to transform how that hospital operates," I told him as he straightened his tie in our tiny apartment bathroom. "They'd be crazy not to hire you. And when you get your first major research grant, we're celebrating with champagne that doesn't come in a box," he promised. My research career took off from our spare bedroom because lab space was financially impossible. I specialized in epidemiological data analysis, helping hospitals and public health departments identify disease patterns before they became crises. The work required meticulous attention to detail, endless hours analyzing patient records, cross-referencing symptoms with environmental factors, and building predictive models that could save lives. Nathan never complained about our apartment becoming a paper-covered research station or my late nights tracking outbreak patterns. He'd bring me tea at midnight and look over my shoulder at data visualizations that meant nothing to him. "Saving the world from the next pandemic?" he'd ask, rubbing my shoulders as I highlighted concerning clusters of symptoms in hospital admission data. "Maybe just saving a few thousand people from a really bad flu season," I'd reply. "I think I've identified a pattern that suggests we're going to see a surge in respiratory infections in the Pacific Northwest in about 6 weeks." My prediction proved accurate. The hospitals I'd warned were prepared. The ones that ignored my analysis were overwhelmed. After that, my phone rang constantly with health departments wanting to hire the epidemiologist who could see outbreaks coming before they arrived. Nathan was genuinely proud of my work during those days. At parties, he'd introduce me as the woman who predicts pandemics before they happen, and his pride was completely authentic. We were both building something meaningful, both contributing equally to our shared mission of fixing healthcare. His own career was advancing steadily through various hospitals. He started as an assistant administrator, moved into operations management, then secured positions with increasing authority and impressive salary increases. I watched him develop confidence in boardrooms and master the political complexities of hospital leadership. I got the chief operating officer position at St. Brennan's Medical Center, he announced one evening, practically vibrating with excitement. It's one of the top research hospitals in the country. This could change everything. That's incredible. When do you start? Next month. There's one thing though. We need to relocate to Philadelphia. I know that means you'll have to rebuild your network of hospital contacts from scratch. I didn't hesitate. Of course we're moving. This is exactly what we've been working toward. Relocating meant abandoning the relationships I'd built with regional health departments and the hospitals that trusted my analysis. But I believed completely in our partnership. I transferred ongoing projects to colleagues, said goodbye to my professional network, and spent weeks researching Philadelphia's healthcare landscape. What I couldn't have predicted was how professional success would gradually shift the fundamental dynamic between us. The man who used to value my analytical insight started making decisions independently. He'd come home discussing hospital politics and strategic initiatives, but when I'd offer perspectives based on my epidemiological expertise, he'd smile politely and change the subject. Healthcare administration operates differently than research, became his standard response when I questioned decisions that seemed short-sighted from a public health standpoint. You can't understand the political pressures I'm dealing with. The shift accelerated dramatically when Dr. Serena Blake was hired as Chief Medical Officer about a year into Nathan's tenure at St. Brennan's. Suddenly, every conversation included references to Serena's innovative approaches, her pharmaceutical industry connections, her visionary leadership style. She's absolutely brilliant, Nathan would say, describing some initiative Serena had proposed. She understands how to position the hospital for maximum revenue while still appearing to prioritize patient care. The phrase appearing to prioritize should have been my first red flag. I tried being supportive. She sounds impressive. We should invite her for dinner sometime. I'd love to meet someone who's had such an impact on your thinking. Serena's schedule is incredibly demanding, he said quickly. Executive meetings, pharmaceutical partnerships, clinical trial oversight. She barely has time for social obligations. Despite never meeting her, Serena's influence on our marriage intensified. Nathan began dismissing my professional expertise entirely, characterizing my work as academic compared to his real-world responsibilities. The researcher whose outbreak predictions had saved thousands of lives was suddenly too theoretical to understand actual healthcare. Serena's genius extended beyond just influencing Nathan's opinions. She orchestrated my exclusion from his professional world with surgical precision. Hospital events would be scheduled for dates when she knew I had research commitments. She'd send invitations for optional spouse gatherings, then later mention how disappointed she was that I couldn't attend. The other executives' wives are so involved in our hospital community, she told Nathan during one of their frequent evening calls, her voice clearly audible from where I sat in our living room. Margaret Chen organizes the annual fundraiser, and Patricia Williams volunteers in the pediatric ward every week. It really elevates the entire leadership team when families participate. The message was clear. I was failing as an administrator's wife by prioritizing my own research over Nathan's hospital functions. The text messages started arriving with predictable regularity. Happy holidays, Vanessa. Hope you're finding fulfillment in your little research projects while Nathan transforms healthcare delivery at St. Brennan's. So grateful for his dedication. Thinking of you both. Nathan mentioned how understanding you are about his commitment to our patients. Not every wife could be so flexible about her husband's demanding career. Each message felt like a paper cut. Small, precise, designed to diminish me while appearing supportive. Serena had perfected the art of the backhanded compliment. Am I overreacting? I asked Nathan after one particularly condescending message about how adorable it was that I still played with disease statistics. Serena's just being friendly, She sends messages to all the executives' families. You're reading too much into it. But I wasn't reading too much into anything. My years of analyzing data patterns had taught me to recognize systematic manipulation, and Serena's pattern was crystal clear. She was methodically repositioning me in Nathan's mind from partner to accessory. The transformation in Nathan's behavior became impossible to ignore. He started coming home with Serena's opinions on everything from investment strategies to vacation destinations. Serena says European travel is overrated. She recommends focusing on building professional networks at domestic conferences instead. Serena thinks our neighborhood is too far from the hospital. She mentioned a development closer to Street Brennan's where several executives live. The most infuriating part was how he'd present her advice as if it came from some higher authority on life itself. One evening, I tried to discuss a concerning pattern I'd noticed in regional hospital data. I'm seeing an unusual cluster of post-surgical infections across 3 Philadelphia hospitals, I said over dinner. The pattern suggests a potential contaminated medical supply issue. Someone should investigate before it becomes a serious outbreak. Nathan barely looked up from his phone. Serena says, our infection rates are within normal parameters. She reviews all the clinical data personally. I'm not talking about Street Brennan specifically. I'm talking about a regional pattern that could indicate a supply chain problem affecting multiple facilities. Serena has an MD and 15 years of clinical experience. She understands these things better than someone who just looks at numbers from the outside. The dismissal was complete. My decade of outbreak prediction, my track record of identifying problems before they became crises, my specialized expertise in exactly this kind of pattern recognition, all of it had become irrelevant compared to Serena's general medical knowledge. My breaking point came during a phone conversation I overheard. Nathan was in his home office with the door slightly open, and Serena's voice carried clearly through the house. You have executive potential, Nathan. I see you on track for hospital CEO within 5 years, but you need to surround yourself with people who understand ambition at that level. People who can enhance your image, not hold you back with academic distractions. Vanessa's research is actually quite respected in her field, Nathan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Of course it is, in its own limited way. But you need a partner who can work a room at a charity gala, not someone who'd rather analyze spreadsheets. You need someone who elevates your profile. I stood frozen in our hallway, listening to Serena systematically dismantle my marriage while positioning herself as the solution to Nathan's professional needs. That night, I started keeping detailed notes of every interaction, every comment, every subtle manipulation. As someone trained in pattern recognition, I finally understood exactly what Serena was doing. The notebook filled with Serena's manipulations was hidden in my desk drawer when Nathan burst through our front door on a Thursday evening in October. Get your best dress ready, he announced. The Street Brennan's annual charity gala is in 2 weeks. Serena specifically requested that you attend this year. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been tracking an unusual cluster of cardiac events at 3 regional hospitals. She requested me? She said it's important for the leadership team to present a unified family image at the hospital's biggest fundraising event. This is huge. Vanessa. Major donors will be there. Pharmaceutical executives. The board of directors. Something about his excitement felt rehearsed. After 18 months of strategic exclusion, Serena suddenly wanted me at the hospital's most important social event. I thought spouses were discouraged from these events, I said carefully. Serena said this year is different. She wants to create a more inclusive atmosphere. Nathan was already scrolling through his phone. She mentioned you should wear something elegant but understated. We don't want to distract from the hospital's message. The phrase "don't want to distract" told me everything I needed to know about what Serena had planned. The night of the gala, I wore a navy blue dress that struck the right balance between elegant and professional. I'd spent the 2 weeks since Nathan's announcement doing what I do best, analyzing patterns. And what I'd found in Serena's clinical trial data was deeply troubling. The Philadelphia Grand Hotel had been transformed into a glittering celebration of Street Brennan's medical center. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and servers in crisp uniforms moved through crowds of elegantly dressed donors and executives. Nathan guided me toward the registration table with his hand on my lower back, a gesture that felt performative rather than affectionate. Serena intercepted us before we could reach the table. She wore a silver gown that probably cost more than my monthly research contract, Her smile bright enough for photographers but cold enough to freeze water. "Vanessa, you actually came." The emphasis on actually dripped with condescension. "Nathan, why don't you go greet the board members? I'll get your wife situated." She guided me toward a table near the back of the ballroom, far from the stage and the important guests. "Here's your name tag," she said, handing me a small badge. I looked down at the elegant calligraphy. "Nathan's little housewife." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around the table, other executives' spouses were staring, some with shock, others with poorly concealed amusement. "Still playing scientist at home?" Serena asked loudly, ensuring everyone nearby could hear. "How's that little research project going? Finding any fascinating patterns in your data?" The laughter spread through the nearby tables like ripples in a pond. I looked across the ballroom to where Nathan stood with the board members. He'd seen the name tag. I could tell by the way he avoided my eyes, the way his shoulders hunched slightly with discomfort rather than surprise. He'd known. In that moment, something crystallized inside me. I carefully removed the offensive name tag and set it on the table. Then I walked toward the exit, my head held high despite the whispers following me. As I passed Serena, who was basking in the success of her public humiliation, I leaned close to her ear. "I'd double-check your clinical trial data if I were you," I whispered. "Specifically, the Phase 3 results for your cardiac drug partnership with Meridian Pharmaceuticals. The adverse event numbers don't match across your FDA submissions." The color drained from her face. I walked out of that ballroom and into the cold October night. The taxi ride home was silent except for my own breathing. But I wasn't crying. I was calculating. By the time I reached our empty house, I had a plan. Nathan didn't come home that night. I didn't expect him to. Monday morning, I sat in my home office and began the most important research project of my career. The pattern I'd noticed 3 weeks earlier, the unusual cluster of cardiac events at regional hospitals, had led me to dig deeper into Street Brennan's clinical trial data. What I'd found was disturbing. Serena had been overseeing a major cardiac drug trial in partnership with Meridian Pharmaceuticals. The drug, Cardiolex, was positioned to generate hundreds of millions in revenue. But the adverse event data didn't add up. I pulled up the publicly available FDA submissions and compared them to the clinical trial registrations. The discrepancy was subtle but unmistakable to someone who analyzed data patterns for a living. The FDA submission showed a 2.3% rate of serious adverse cardiac events, but the original trial registration had tracked participants with a 4.8% rate of the same events. Nearly half the adverse events had disappeared between the trial and the submission. That wasn't a statistical anomaly. That was fraud. I spent Tuesday and Wednesday building an airtight analysis. I cross-referenced patient enrollment data with adverse event reports. I tracked the timeline of when specific complications had been removed from the dataset. I identified the exact point in the trial where the numbers had been manipulated. Serena's fingerprints were all over it. Her signature appeared on the amended protocols that had conveniently reclassified serious cardiac events as unrelated to treatment. Her approval was documented on the final data submission that had hidden nearly half the drug's dangerous side effects. Wednesday evening, I uploaded my analysis to an anonymous pharmaceutical industry whistleblower forum. The post was titled Cardiolex Clinical Trial, a statistical analysis of disappearing adverse events. By Thursday morning, it had been shared across every major pharmaceutical industry message board. The first journalist called Street Brennan's communications department before noon. By evening, 3 financial analysts had downgraded Meridian Pharmaceuticals stock. By Friday morning, the FDA had announced a preliminary inquiry into Cardiolex trial data. I watched it all unfold from my home office, drinking tea and feeling more alive than I had in years. The real bombshell arrived Friday afternoon. An anonymous email from someone claiming to be a research coordinator at Street Brennan's. "I've been documenting data irregularities for months but was afraid to speak up because Dr. Blake controls everything. Your analysis gave me courage." Attached are internal emails showing explicit instructions to remove adverse events from the trial database. The attachments were damning. Emails from Serena directing staff to optimize the adverse event data. Messages discussing how to reclassify cardiac complications to avoid FDA scrutiny. Most devastating of all, a thread where Serena explicitly acknowledged that the true adverse event rate could jeopardize the entire partnership and needed to be managed appropriately. I forwarded everything to the FDA, the Wall Street Journal, and 3 pharmaceutical industry watchdog organizations. Saturday morning's headline read, Major Research Hospital Under Federal Investigation for Clinical Trial Fraud. Anna Stain. Brennan's stock of partner pharmaceutical company Meridian had dropped 34%. Trading was halted twice. The hospital issued a statement about cooperating fully with regulatory inquiries and announced that Dr. Serena Blake had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Nathan came home for the first time in a week on Saturday afternoon. He looked like he'd aged 5 years and 5 days. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. "We need to talk," he said, finding me in my home office. "About what?" "About the investigation. About everything that's happening at Street Brennan's." He sat heavily in the chair across from my desk. "The FDA seized documents from Serena's office yesterday. The FBI is involved now. There are rumors about criminal charges." "That sounds serious." "It is serious. I've been working closely with Serena for almost 2 years. If they find evidence of intentional fraud, anyone associated with her decisions could be implicated." He leaned forward, desperation in his eyes. "I need your help, Vanessa. You're the best data analyst I know. Can you review the documents I was involved with? Help me understand what investigators might be looking for?" The irony was breathtaking. The man who'd dismissed my expertise for years was now begging for the analytical skills he'd called academic and limited. "Why would you need my help? Doesn't Serena have everything under control?" Nathan's laugh was bitter. "Serena is falling apart. She's blaming everyone except herself, claiming she was just following standard industry practices. But some of the documentation," he swallowed hard. "I think she might have been deliberately manipulating data, Vanessa. I think she might have known the drug was more dangerous than the submissions showed. That would be federal fraud. People go to prison for that." "I know." His voice cracked. "I'm scared. For the first time in my career, I'm genuinely terrified about my professional future." I studied his face, seeing real fear behind the desperation. Part of me felt sympathy for the man I'd once loved unconditionally. But a larger part felt cold satisfaction. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Help me distance myself from Serena's decisions. Review the projects I was involved with and help me understand which ones might look problematic to investigators." He paused, then added quietly, "I know I haven't been the best husband lately. I know I haven't valued your expertise the way I should have. But we're partners, right? We support each other." The words he'd spoken 7 years ago in that hospital break room felt hollow now. "When did you last consider us partners, Nathan? When did you last value my professional judgment? When did you last defend me when someone attacked my credibility?" His face went pale. "If this is about the gala, it's about everything." The gala was just the final confirmation. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder I'd been preparing for this conversation. "Divorce papers. I've already consulted with an attorney." "You're leaving me?" "I'm reclaiming myself." "There's a difference." "But the investigation." "My career. Everything's falling apart." Serena's investigation exists because someone with data analysis skills decided to look closely at patterns that didn't add up. Her career is ending because she was arrogant enough to think no one would notice manipulated clinical trial data. I stood up and walked to the window. "Your career is in jeopardy because you chose loyalty to a corrupt mentor over respect for your wife." Nathan stared at me for a long moment, and I watched understanding dawn on his face. "You know something about this investigation," he said slowly. "The anonymous analysis that started all of this, the whistleblower posts. I know that truth has a way of surfacing when someone trained in pattern recognition decides to look for it." "Vanessa, what did you do?" "I did what I've always done, Nathan. I analyzed data, identified dangerous patterns, and worked to protect people from harm." I turned to face him. "The difference is that this time, I also protected myself." I walked to our bedroom and began packing. "You can't just leave," Nathan called after me. "We can work through this." "When were you planning to start respecting my expertise?" "After Serena's criminal trial? After your career recovers from association with federal fraud?" He followed me, watching as I methodically filled suitcases. "I know I made mistakes. I know I should have said something at the gala. But Serena told me it was just a joke. She said you'd find it funny." "Serena told you about the name tag beforehand?" "It wasn't a question." His silence confirmed what I'd suspected. You knew I was walking into that humiliation, and you said nothing. She said it would be harmless, she said. Did you believe that? Or did you just not care enough to stop it? He couldn't meet my eyes. I zipped my suitcase and headed for the door. On our kitchen counter, I left a note. Nathan, it wasn't the name tag that ended us. It was your silence when it mattered most. The woman you dismissed is the same woman who just exposed a dangerous drug that would have harmed thousands of patients. Maybe next time you'll remember that underestimating people has consequences. Vanessa. The apartment I found was everything our house had never been. Bright, clean, and entirely mine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Philadelphia skyline, and morning light streamed across hardwood floors that held no memories of dismissal or betrayal. 2 weeks after I moved out, I received a call from Dr. Patricia Warren, director of the National Institute for Public Health Research. Dr. Cole, I've been following your work for years, she said. Your recent analysis of the Cardiolex trial data was extraordinary. We need someone with your expertise as our new director of epidemiological analysis. The position comes with full research autonomy and a team of 12 analysts. I nearly dropped my phone. You want to hire me? I want to build an entire research division around your analytical approach. Your ability to identify dangerous patterns before they become public health crises is exactly what we need. 3 weeks later, I walked into the Institute's glass-walled offices wearing a tailored suit and confidence I'd forgotten I possessed. My first major project was analyzing nationwide clinical trial data for signs of manipulation. Within months, my team had identified 3 other pharmaceutical companies with suspicious adverse event patterns. The woman who'd been called Nathan's little housewife was now leading research initiatives that protected millions of patients. The news alert about Serena arrived on a Tuesday morning. Former Chief Medical Officer Dr. Serena Blake indicted on federal charges of clinical trial fraud and conspiracy. The accompanying photo showed a woman I barely recognized. Gone were the designer gowns and commanding presence. Serena stood outside the federal courthouse looking small and ordinary, her shoulders hunched in defeat. The charges were serious: falsifying FDA submissions, conspiracy to conceal adverse events, and securities fraud related to Meridian Pharmaceuticals stock manipulation. Each count carried potential prison time. I read the article twice, feeling something I hadn't expected. Not triumph but quiet satisfaction. Justice had been served through exposure of truth, not through revenge. The Cardiolex drug was pulled from development. The patients who would have received it, unaware of its true risks, were protected. That mattered more than any personal vindication. 6 months after leaving Nathan, the transformation was complete. The woman who'd been publicly humiliated at a hospital gala was now a nationally recognized expert whose analysis influenced pharmaceutical policy decisions. My research team had prevented 3 potentially dangerous drugs from reaching patients. Industry publications cited my work, and other research institutions tried to recruit me monthly. But the professional success was only part of the story. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based entirely on my own judgment and priorities. My apartment reflected my taste. My schedule revolved around work I found meaningful. My evenings belonged to me. Friday nights, I'd sit on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights and marveling at how peaceful life could be without constant dismissal. No more analyzing conversations for hidden criticisms. No more wondering if my insights would be valued or ignored. No more shrinking myself to make someone else comfortable. The divorce papers arrived requiring only my signature. Nathan had included a handwritten note. Vanessa, I know I can never undo the damage I caused. You were always the more accomplished partner in our marriage. I was just too blind to see it until too late. I hope you find the recognition you've always deserved. Nathan. The acknowledgement felt hollow after years of dismissal, but I appreciated that it came at all. Nathan was facing his own consequences: unemployment, professional disgrace, and the loss of a wife whose expertise could have guided him away from Serena's corruption if he'd bothered to listen. As I signed the papers, I thought about the couple we'd been. 2 exhausted residents with shared dreams. That partnership had been real, but it had been fragile. When success and outside influence tested its foundation, we discovered it wasn't strong enough to survive. But from the ashes of that failed marriage, something better had emerged. Not revenge. Resurrection. The woman Serena had tried to diminish was thriving in ways neither she nor Nathan could have imagined. The clinical trial fraud that could have harmed thousands was exposed. The truth had done all the work. I'd simply given it the opportunity to shine. If this story of quiet justice resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. My favorite part was that moment when Vanessa whispered about the clinical trial data, knowing exactly what was coming. What was yours?
Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection. Now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone again. I'm freezing. I'm bleeding, slowly fading away. But don't worry, I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile. Every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry. I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here. Maybe sorrow feels like home. So I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry. I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, no, it's just my last defense. 'Cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. No, I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry. I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay.